Hey guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Franchise Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts from around the franchise industry to discuss topics that are of great concern or of great interest or help you to build a memorable brand that will thrive and scale. I've got with me today Jeremy Arthur, who's the CEO founder of Adminify. Now, if you guys don't know Adminify yet, you'll probably hear about him soon. But I want to tell you a little bit about why Jeremy's going to be on the show because you're going to appreciate the insights he brings. So these guys, Adminify is the leader in franchise AI solutions right now. His team, they're deeply entrenched. They bought a bunch of franchises so they could learn the industry first and what the key pain points were, so they could then build the solutions that they have in place now. They've in the past in their tech careers, they've worked with groups like launch software across Amazon nationally and internationally, AT&T, Uber, DoorDash. In franchising, they're working with some home service leaders like HFC, Authority Brands, and Neighborly. So these guys know the space. Year to date, Adminify has handled more than 3 million conversations and 100,000 autonomous bookings with their agentic AI solution so far. So these guys are not like your Cracker Jack startup. Everybody and their cousins got an AI company. This is not them. These guys are a legit enterprise scaling, franchise focused AI solution. So, Jeremy, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit more about you and Adminify, and then we'll talk about our topic today, which is going to be obviously AI related. So, welcome to the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Appreciate the introduction. Yeah, it's like you said, our group has worked together for about 15 years. And we worked with the large corporations like Amazon, AT&T. We launched a really important software for Amazon, Key for Business, both internationally and or domestically and internationally. That was kind of our pivot into the software space. That was back right during COVID. We launched, 2019 through COVID, and then we actually started our own home service-based companies, and we built our own agentic AI automation solution for our own companies, and we really love the franchise space. We got introduced to some of the bigger franchise groups like really early on in our journey. And in order to understand that, like you mentioned, we were like, man, we want to go all in on franchising. We love the space. We love the connection. We love, really everything about it. And so we purchased our own franchises to understand the relationship between franchisor, franchisee, and everything in between, because there's a really fine balance between making both parties happy, right? Um,
Yeah.
and that's what we found out really, really early on when we were working with these large franchise groups like the ones you mentioned. The franchisors or the brands, they really want visibility and consistency. They really want to make sure that they're providing a consistent experience across the board. But then we all know that if the franchisee doesn't have it's not set up the way that they want it, or they don't feel like they have their own input, then it will never work, right? So
Mhm.
there's a fine balance between delivering consistency across like the brand, but then allowing each individual location to exist in their own ecosphere, because they are, even though they're part of a franchise group, they still are their own business. They operate differently from everybody else. And so that's kind of the niche that we fill right there is providing visibility, transparency, and consistent journey. But yeah, we're really excited to be on the podcast and kind of dive into some of these topics.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad you're here, Jeremy. Love your energy, but also kind of the direction you guys are going. Let's talk about it. So, guys, there's all these discussions right now. Everybody's a pundit now. Everyone's got an opinion, but I thought I'd bring in some real experts to talk about how, where, and when should we be using agentic AI in your franchise system. But the first thing I want to talk about, because there's a lot of fear, right? There's a lot of concern, a lot of hesitation. And I think appropriately so in some regards, and also ignorantly in others. So, but where are you seeing right now, Jeremy, like the biggest areas of fear as we discuss AI and franchising? What are you running into?
Yeah, no, this is a really topic that hits close to home, and it's really relevant right now. I don't know if you've heard. So we're based in Utah. Utah is going through this big transition right now, where they're trying to put more data centers in places like Utah, and there's a lot of people that are excited about it, some that are nervous about it. I think the biggest thing with AI is people don't quite understand it, and they don't understand um, what it can do, what it's capable of. I think one of the biggest things that we see is we work really closely with the office staff, right? Because we're interacting with customers when the office staff is unavailable or at certain parts of the customer journey where it makes the most sense. And so I think one of the biggest fears is around, you know, is this going to take my job? Is this going to, take over what I'm doing? And where does it stop? Where does it end? And so I think like that's probably the biggest fear that when we talk to people is that. But then just the other thing is the interaction with customers. They really want it to feel like it's still personal, right? Like AI seems like for a lot of people, like they've probably had bad experiences with AI. Like you call not to call anybody out specifically, you call your bank and you have a conversation with their AI, it's usually terrible, right?
Awful.
Um, I just had a conversation with a large sporting goods store on their chat widget on their website, and I asked it two very basic questions. I needed to know, do you have my son's glove in stock? This is what I'm looking for, and it couldn't answer that basic question. So sometimes when you think AI, you just think very robotic. You think, is this going to, is this going to turn my customers off? Like, is it going to hurt my brand? Is probably the next thing. One of them is a little bit more about AI in general. The other one's like, hey, how do I make sure that this doesn't affect my customer experience negatively? And so those are probably like the two biggest fears that we hear pretty regularly are those.
Yeah, I think they're viable as well. You know
Yeah.
what? I mean, especially the latter part. I mean, bless their hearts, like Delta still hasn't figured this out.
Oh yeah.
Like these big brands. Like, by the way, can I, if I can find someone, can I introduce you to them so you can help Delta fix their chats and
Yeah.
their AI? It's garbage.
Please do. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So
I
bad.
promise we would do better than what's going on their
I,
website right now.
this is what blows my mind. Being like a tech nerd, right? I guess I should push it up that way if I'm a nerd. But like I mean, they have all the data, right? Like the beauty of AI is like when you've got the data model and it's open and accessible through APIs, and you've got the right agentic solution that's intelligent and learning and rapidly evolving, then it should become a better process. And part of what we run into with some of these things is they're actually not AI. They're like hard coded like logic trains, kind of like your bot presses from years ago. Like that's okay. Like you can use basic logic, but they're not truly AI because they're not getting smarter. They're not learning. But man, like there's a lot of fear as a franchisor thinking about, okay, how do I roll this new tech out? I've got a mandate from the board. Last year, I felt like, and even this year, there are a lot of brands like, well, we've been told one of our strategic initiatives is AI. We
Yeah.
don't know what to do. Like, I feel like I'm insulting people, but like they really have no clue, but they're being forced to deploy AI. Um, and one of the big questions that people have, and I want to dive into this deeper because you said it, is like should AI be taking over and where should humans be? Like where's that line? And I'm wondering if you could share maybe some better insights into that, Jeremy. Like, where do you see that line being to optimize the value of AI, but also the value of humans? Because, as a guy who's got a lot of human skills, you got a team of people, like you're not replacing your whole team with AIs, and you're an AI company. So help us draw that line maybe where you've seen it be effective.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think our stance has always been we want to enhance the what you're already doing for your customers, right? There are certain points in the customer journey where customers just want quick, they want answers, so the top of lead, obviously, like when somebody reaches out, like we always say that your best employee is always going to be the best option if they're available, right? So where we typically sit, where we find our the most success, and for the most part, is if your team's available, let them have the conversations. If they're not, then let it roll over to an AI assistant, right? Because it's way better than them getting no answer or having to call back. Or the average response times, I've heard a bunch of different things. It's hours most of the time, sometimes days for
Yeah.
the average home service company. And so typically what we say is like Adminify, we combine every communication channel that exists. And if your people, your employees don't pick up first, then we pick it up. So the biggest thing, it's pretty obvious, is speed of lead, right? Somebody calling you, reaching out like a potential new customer, uh, you know, buying or getting people to call your phone number. Leads are getting more expensive. So capitalizing on every single one of those, super, super important, right? And then I would say like monotonous questions like, where's my tech? Where's my follow-up things that like is just going to be mundane, repetitive tasks. A great place to save time for your staff. We always say automate the repetitive so you can focus on the proactive stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so we've found that like as an example, right? Like we typically don't suggest that if somebody's looking to cancel their services or somebody's upset with the way something was performed, it's probably not going to be the best situation for to deploy AI in that situation, right? So
Yeah. But why is that? I think let's dive a layer deeper. Like, I totally agree. That's a sensitive conversation, right? Why is AI not the right solution for what probably needs to be a fairly empathetic conversation when someone's trying to cancel?
yeah, and oddly enough, like we AI can be pretty empathetic. It can empathize. I think that what that part of the customer journey really requires like a connection, right? A relationship, and that's something where I would say that like AI is never going to replace the human connection, and uh, it's really really good at analyzing data, having conversations, giving price quotes, booking appointments, and it is good at empathizing and gathering information. So as far as like customer support, interestingly enough, of all of the conversations that we actually have with our network across all platforms, the vast majority of it is customer support.
Hmm.
And so there are certain items that it can do really well with, but then we make it very clear when it should be transferred off to a human. And a lot of that depends on like the specific business that you're in, right? Like, and even down to the location that you're in, can matter a lot, right? So we have some really interesting data that shows, uh, for example, states like here in Utah, Utah is very forward thinking, tech based. Like we can complete about 85 to 90% of our conversations with our AI network,
Hmm.
meaning no matter what it is, we can take it to completion the vast majority of the time. But there's other states where maybe it's less effective in specific channels, specifically around voice AI and things like that. So, yeah, knowing kind of your market, your demographic is really important on where to where to allow AI to engage with your customers and where not to.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little because we're talking, franchise brands are listening in who operate across 50 states.
Yeah.
Or if they're wise, they leave the Western seaboard alone because that's a pain in the butt to operate out there. But
Yeah.
some of them are big enough they have to. But where are you seeing that? Like, where are places where, like you mentioned, Utah, get that, younger demographic on average. Like, what are the things that they should be considering or to know when typically a market's not going to love AI and voice specifically?
Yeah, so a perfect example that comes to mind is like Florida. So Florida, maybe the demographics a little bit older, more established, maybe retired, and I would say the business model. So back to Florida, right? Like we typically don't tend to lead a lot with voice AI agents in those markets because people they just assume that they're talking to Delta's AI again. Once again, they hear that they immediately go transfer, 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 yeah, or they hang up, right?
Yeah.
And so even though it could be helpful, we've definitely found best practices. Like there's a balance between saying too much and not saying enough. And so, there are things that we can do that, A/B testing where it's like, if you let them know things that can happen up front, like what the AI is capable of, hey, I can book an appointment, I can reschedule you, I can give you a price quote up front, that it does tend to help a little bit more. But the specific demographics around your customer. And then I would say one thing that we focus on a lot at Adminify is really allowing the businesses that have a lot of repeat customers to either change the way that the AI interacts with your repeat customers, or allows you to individualize the when and how it's interacting. So I would say there's obviously like franchise models that they rely heavily on returning customers, right? So it's really important that you're dealing with a group that can differentiate between a brand new customer, a brand new lead that's happening, and somebody who's returning for the 10th season in a row or 10th year in a row. And so your business model matters as well. Like, are you driving a lot of repeat business? Do you have a lot of repeat buyers, or are you really just trying to get more customers through the door?
Yeah, no, it's super valid. And why is that so critical? Like, what happens when you have the same basic model deployed across every location without considering how do I interact with a repeat customer, maybe an old customer who hasn't talked to me for a while, or just a current customer who's on like a regular maintenance plan? Like, how does that AI need to be trained so that it interacts appropriately with those audiences?
Yeah. Well, everybody has their kind of champions, right? Their customers that have been with them forever. And those are the people that like they're used to talking to Dave, right? They talk to me, they talk to the owner. So I think
Mm,
it's important to know that like there's certain customers that like maybe you don't ever want to turn them over, and you handle them slightly differently, and
mm,
that's okay. That's understandable. But a returning customer, just one to think about your I always think about, how would I want to be treated as a customer? And I think that's one thing that's really unique about Adminify. Just we come from a customer acquisition background, and then we deployed really good tech on top of that. Like most tech companies are tech based, tech first. We come from about 12 years of customer acquisition. So really understanding what does a customer want, how do they want to be treated, and then making it to where you get that as right as possible with AI is really the difference, right? And
mm.
so if you think about a returning customer, they don't want to answer, questions that they've answered already 10 times just as a starting point, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you have to be able to differentiate, like, if somebody's coming back, the AI it should either not interact with them, or if it's good, it should be able to have access to all the information that already exists, their current information as it's relevant to them, their last time that they were serviced, the price that they paid, what was their experience, all those things. And I think this kind of maybe parlays into the next conversation is
Mhm.
you have to be able to have really good integrations with like your CRM and your data systems for this to work.
Right.
Because we've been a part of we've taken over a lot of rollouts where they've tried to roll out just one blanket solution across an entire organization, and it may work at top of funnel lead only, but then beyond that it typically breaks
Mhm.
because you don't have that visibility into the specifics that you really need to create a unique customer experience with every interaction. And I think that's kind of what that, if I were to wrap all that up, everything into one, concept, it would be every time a customer interacts with your business, it needs to be unique, it needs to be individualized. And what we typically do is if we can't give that experience, if we can't give that unique interaction, then we typically trigger a handoff, which is still beneficial to the owners, to the alpha staff, because it's going to summarize everything in a nice, neat text message, email with all the contact information, what they were looking for. So still saves time, still makes sure that your customers are getting instant interaction. But knowing when to pass it off really comes down to, can you give the customer what they're looking for or not?
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. For like, I mean, obviously CRM company, right? So as you've got an Adminify agent that let's say is interacting with a ClientTether client, just give a hypothetical, and the Adminify agent can read into the Dave Hansen's profile record and see that, oh, I just got a paint job done or a flooring job done, and it was 2 years ago, and it was about $5,500. And like you can read through the previous communications, you can see our conversations about baseball back and forth. Like if you set up the AI agent correctly, it will know all of that corpus of information before it ever starts to engage with me. And so it will contextualize, personalize, because they can do that very well. But if you can't tie into the history, let's say it's a home service like cleaning operation, and it's a recurring service model. Like, do you know what kind of a service they get? How frequently do they get it? And do they have a preference of, do they need a pet? Have they had pet and odor removal before? Because that's an upsell. So now I can add that into what I talk to them about. Hey, is it time for another pet and odor removal service, Bob? Like, I guess I'm monologuing along the lines that you were just explaining, but just to put it into real context, if you're working with the right AI partner, those things are getting pulled into the agent, so the agent is smart enough to be able to help do what a human would do, sometimes better than a human because they don't go bother to check the details every time they call.
Yeah, yeah, I think it makes complete sense. It's only as good as the context that it has, the information that it has to pull from. Yeah, getting good CRM partners like ClientTether is really important because number one, the infrastructure has to exist, right? You have to be
Right.
able to access that information. It has to be available, which is really difficult. I mean, AI has advanced so quickly that to be able to make that stuff available is really important, right? But then we actually have two different. We have several, but we kind of break our AI agents, AI employees into two different categories. We have customer facing agents and employees, and then we have action assistants. And those action assistants actually can gather some of the important data that you're talking about. It just brought to my mind when you were talking about the reoccurring model of a cleaning company. We have a franchise group that they rely heavily on returning customers and the subscription model, and they were saying, hey, we're storing this data of every subscription. The last time people were serviced, did they cancel? Did they not? Where are they at? And so they had kind of their CRM was generating kind of like it actually wasn't even their CRM. They were generating an at risk list, right? Like, hey, these are people that we're worried might cancel. And
Hmm.
we were like, why don't you just pass that off to our action assistants, and then it can ingest that information and handle those potential customers like proactively. And so that's just kind of an example. When you have the right connection, when you have the right integration, a lot of that stuff that's just you would love to get to it as a business owner, right? Like it's like super, super important, but maybe it's like you don't have the staff or the bandwidth to make that important. Like that's one thing that like we deployed our agents across that at risk list, and we reduced churn. I'd love to go into the specifics, the numbers there, but we reduced churn drastically there
Hmm.
for that group just by saying, okay, here's data, it's here. What can I do with it? And that's another great part of having the right CRM integration
Yeah.
connected to AI.
No, totally get that. It's all about the context. And you said it before, but I'll reiterate it. The more context you can feed the AI, then the better it can be. The more specific it can be, the more prescriptive it can be as it's engaging with people with accuracy, right?
Correct.
Because AI will be prescriptive sometimes, but if you don't train it properly and give it the right data, it's shooting from the hip. We don't want that with AI. But we started talking about this, but let's take it a step back. So you've discussed a couple of key parts of the business that probably ought to be using AI today. Um, but before speed to lead, top of funnel engagement, sales follow up, things like that, scheduling. And I know you guys have already booked 100,000 meetings this year, right? So but these things encroach upon like there are existing humans that are typically trying to handle that. Now I say trying to handle that because we just finished a lead response evaluation data project in the industry with home service brands and average response time, even with the brands that had cool AI and all these things, like average response time was still like 20 hours.
Wow.
20,
Yeah.
20 hours, dude. Like that's gross. It's
Yeah,
gross.
that's fair.
Yeah. So anyway, and the reason why it's skewed so high is because some of them never freaking responded, right? So which is also it's like it was like 15 or 16% never ever even responded once through any channel, which is gross. But humans generally are supposed to be responsible for this. And a lot of people are worried about like, well, what about Betty in my front office? Like, how do I she might get replaced by this AI. What have you seen brands do that start rolling out AI and have a Betty or a Frank in the front office that used to sort of follow up on leads, but probably wasn't doing a great job? What do those employees end up doing? Are companies saying, "Good, you're out of here. I'm saving money," or what do they typically do with their humans when they start to operationalize AI and eliminate the need for humans to spend time in minutia? What do you find your clients are doing with the humans that were otherwise chasing minutia?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that comes to mind here is the number of like lead channels or communication channels is so it's nearly impossible for somebody to keep up with, right? And so um, that's one thing that comes to mind. Like as an example, Facebook, right? You may have maybe a Facebook message come in that you're not seeing, like what connecting all those different communication channels is really really important. But um, the biggest thing that we've seen is you always have your highest uh, priority clients, right? You always have your most important clients, your most important tasks. So very, very rarely, except for maybe excessive spending, are we seeing people like get replaced. What most people are able to do and what they're excited to do, and the office staff, once they kind of understand what we're doing, is they're like, hey, I've been able to shift my focus onto these higher priority customers
Hmm.
and create a better experience for them and create better retention and create better relationships and versus trying to answer the same question for the 10th time. And so most of the time it just allows them to our mission statement is to free up your time so you can focus on what matters most. And everybody has that thing that matters most to them. And typically it's either relationships with your top customers, your top partnerships, even internally with your team. How much time, if you free up 3 or 4 hours a day, how much more productive could you be if you were focused on the more important tasks? And really what I would say our customers tell us that it comes down to is they're able to grow their business or focus, on the business instead of being in the business. And I think
Hmm.
we could probably dive into that more. You probably heard that concept, but that's kind of the thing that the point that the owners are bringing back to us is, man, I was so focused in the business on this lead and this phone call and that phone call to where when a big bulk of that was being handled, I was able to focus on my business more, growth strategies or partnerships or, those things that matter more that you really sometimes can't get to because you're just buried in all the minutia, like you said.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, let's rapid fire. Where are some of the top, where are some key parts of the business that really AI can make a huge impact today? And I'll list off some of the areas that you guys are spending most time right now.
So obviously, top of funnel lead, we kind of talked about that. And another one is payments is a big one. A lot of times people are like they either need to make a payment or they're past due. Once again, like as long as you have the right CRM integrations and things like that, being able to handle that around the clock and around different channels is really really important.
Hmm.
It's surprising to me how much AR people just have sitting out there that's not collected on, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty important one. I'd also say that like where applicable and where possible, like reviews and review collection and really NPS scores more so than reviews. If you can interact with the customer in a conversational way and just say like, how did we do? And gather kind of NPS scores, then we've seen us be able to really increase both the review count and the overall customer sentiment, and but then focus on the times and the situations where customers maybe aren't happy. So those are times where we can say, okay, if everything went well, let's get the review, let's get the NPS score. But then if we didn't, then that's the time where we would hand it off to your CSR or your employee and say, let's call this customer and let's see if we can make it right. So those are some of the biggest needle movers for our clients. And then depending on the industry, like we talked about, support related questions typically is the biggest category that the AI is handling.
Hmm.
So giving at least a really good support outlet that when your staff's not available, just provides a much better customer experience. But then once again, kind of coming back to really narrowing down when the AI should hand off or not engaged is really important part of that customer support. So
Yeah.
um, those are
Hmm.
the categories where I'd say we've seen the best like needle moving moments deploying AI.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, scheduling, right? Booking appointments,
Yeah, top.
reschedules. Yeah, those are, yeah. I agree, top of funnel, but I just want to highlight some people, when we say top of funnel, they don't hear scheduling, booking. So I wanted just to reiterate that's key. Um,
Yeah,
well,
that's a good point. Some people don't understand that. Like with ClientTether, for an example, right? Like we can actually the AI agents can go in, see an actual time slot, present time slots, give pricing and all those different things, and put it on a calendar so that your technicians or whatever they see the job, they go do the job. So that is a great point. Like for a lot of our customers, maybe they miss that. They still think maybe there's extra steps involved there where for the most part it's not. It's just another it's more revenue on your calendar that most likely or potentially you could have missed, especially if your response time is 20 hours, right? Like, or to your point, like I wrote down like 15% of the time they're not responding. And I don't know if you have the data, but how many times did they respond more than once, right?
oh yeah, rarely, rarely. Yes. And by the way, these are not our clients. Just to be clear, like, yeah, as you would
Yeah.
expect, that they're within seconds they're responding to every single lead. But then let me just share this example. We have clients that want to use Adminify, right? So they've got sales automation. You would think like I've already got an email and a text and a phone call coming to my team, uh, and then I've got nurturing automatically happening in a system like ClientTether, right? But and yet our clients are all hungry for AI because they can't always answer the phone when we make it ring. They can't always respond to the text in a timely manner. They can't like even though these automations are happening, when the client engages, somebody still needs to be ready to engage the client. You usually have like a 2 to 3 minute window and a text response before somebody's like, they're drifting off into something else, right? So yeah, how would you add to that? Because I see this is where you get the right CRM partner, awesome, but there's still, especially if you've got a decent number of leads coming through, you still cannot engage meaningfully even after first touch and first engagement has been automated.
Yeah, I just think of myself as a customer, right? Like when I have time to dedicate to something, I don't have a lot of time, right? Like I'm between business and work and kids and school and sports and all those things. So when I'm thinking about rescheduling an appointment or making a payment, that whatever, I need an answer pretty quickly, right? So when I get that message, to your point, this we see a lot of this. And by the way, I love that people are already doing those automations, and that is so much better than most businesses out there. So you're already way ahead. But kind of what that next step is, what you said, right? Like the automation goes out that says, "Hey, just a reminder, we're on our way." And I go, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I forgot my kid has their end of school program today. Can I reschedule that?" Right? Um, if you don't see that instantly, or your staff, then you may have just deployed somebody to a house that gets turned away, and then you waste even more resources. So that's a perfect example of when you have the right connections. When if your staff isn't there immediately, the AI kicks in under 30 seconds. It takes that job, it reschedules it, so you're not wasting timing resources. It can alert your staff. And once again, just context matters, right? Like um, those automations are not context aware for the most part, but they are good. They're amazing to have, and they definitely like increase and make you stand apart. But adding AI to those things just kind of makes those come alive, if you will. So
Yeah, there's this great study in the UK. It's from a few years ago, but They studied text broadcasters. If you remember when texting was, I mean, we've been doing it for like tw almost 12 years, but like when texting started becoming cool about 5, 6 years ago, a bunch of companies were offering services where you can broadcast a text out to all your people, but people couldn't respond. And in the study, they found that if you send a text message out and they respond and they can't respond, you're actually going to make them mad. Like you're going to irritate them more. So you're better not to send that text in the first place. But what happens when like if your buddy texts you and he's like, or let's say your little league baseball coach, like, hey, practice today at 3:30, and you respond back right away like 3:30. What do you mean? It's supposed to be 5. Like we all have jobs here, bud. And then no one ever responds. Like what's your sentiment as the consumer in that experience where they sent you a message, you respond, and then crickets?
Yeah, yeah. You're like you said, you just be better off not getting that text at all, right? I would be upset. I would be like, well, why did you even text me in the first part? Yeah, to begin with.
Yeah.
So
And in open disclosure, I got a text message during this meeting. I'm not sure if you heard the ping. So like I'm getting texts from clients right now, but they're going to get a response in a couple minutes. And then this one's not urgent. But if it was an urgent text, and I'm in the middle of recording this podcast, like how am I gonna take care of that customer and make sure they feel like I'm all over it?
yeah,
AI is an answer there. It's kind of like your second tier support or engagement. But at certain stages of the life cycle, AI should can probably handle all of that and let your people, how about your people make outbound phone calls? How about your people like do things that like, AI can do that too, but like where's the most important area where you can deploy the resource? In the past, business owners and franchises haven't had the luxury to think that way. They've just been like, handle everything. Uh,
yeah,
but now you can shift if you're using AI effectively, right? What's the
yeah.
most, you mentioned like, call back my highest priority clients. How about every project that's already booked today? I want to just give them a quick call, make sure everything's going okay with those projects. I just finished these 3 projects. I want to call the owners and find out how did it go? Like you were talking about, like high touch, high value effort. Most franchise brands don't get to think in those terms. They're just trying to handle minutia, and oftentimes it's the stuff that's the lowest priority, the lowest impact, but they're doing it because it's right in their face.
Yeah, what I think of it, we call Adminify kind of the safety net, right? It's like just make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, right? Communication wise,
Mhm.
um, and number one, and then yeah, exactly like what you said. I think the business model matters a lot, right? Like if you're if you're an appliance company and your average ticket value is $150 or something like that, and it's just all about the number of leads coming through, for those types of customers, we typically are put in the first line of defense, answer every single call, answer
Yeah,
every call, every text, every email, and then when something happens that you can't handle, pass it off. But then when you think of something like, landscaping or roofing or, even HVAC and plumbers, right? Like,
they're big tickets. Yeah.
higher ticket items. So it doesn't mean that we're not there, we're not interacting. It means that like when your employees are available to interact, that's great. Like have them interact. And then typically what we would say is missed calls, missed opportunities, weekends, maybe places where you're paying for an additional call center. That's where we've seen people go and say, okay, we can probably save some money here. What we've seen is our conversion rate into revenue and booking is as good, if not better, than some of these systems because, once again, coming back to the right integration, when you have an AI agent with the right API connections and all those things, the most recent study that we did, or case study, is to book an appointment with this group we were working with on the phone. The average phone call was about 13 minutes long. It was between 12 and 13
13
minutes.
minutes. Holy smokes.
So they had a bunch of questions that they had to answer, the scheduling, all those different things, right? So the same conversation with us took between 3 and 4 minutes because we were able to just automate the pulls of scheduling and pricing and all those things that when you have a potential live agent at a website reloading pages, you know, it just makes those things so much quicker.
Yeah, that's huge. Okay. I love that. A great case study. How can AI help, right? Convoluted scheduling. Love the idea of focusing like people that are in an industry where they've got high volumes of low value or low revenue tasks. I think like pressure washing, window cleaning, all those things where it's a sub $1,000 ticket item. Like it's expensive to have humans handle that minutia. It really is. And
Yeah.
where AI can be almost a fixed small cost every month, it seems like it's a great solution. And now I feel like I'm selling you on this guy. So make sure, buy AI, buy AI, buy.
Yeah.
But
And then to your point, then like the higher ticket items, it's like if AI helps you capture one of those, even a quarter, it typically pays for itself. You know what I mean?
oh
For
yeah.
us, it depends on the ticket value or the lifetime customer that you're, in
Mhm.
your industry. But for the most part, and that's something that we could go into, is our ROIs are typically massive, in these industries. So it is a numbers game, right? So we typically have to gather two or three or four of the lower ticket items to give a positive ROI. But some of these bigger items, it's one of them a month, and you've paid for Adminify for the quarter or maybe even for the year
Yeah.
if it's the right job. We just went live with a landscaping company, a landscaping group this last week, and it's across the org. And the first one that came through was about an $18,000 job that came in the evening time, and AI answered it, gathered it, put it on the calendar, and this guy was like, "Hey, you never know. Maybe this guy would have called another company or whatever." So,
Mhm.
um, pretty cool.
Yeah, love that. Well, guys, Jeremy, let's say somebody wanted to reach out to you because they're like, hey, this sounds cool. I'd like to learn more about AI or how I can apply it effectively, or can my system handle you working with an agentic model? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah. So go to our website, adminify.ai. You can book a demo on there. So we obviously going to do free demos, and then what we typically do is we like to work with. We typically like to work with a franchisor or or key franchisees within our franchise group. But what we do is we get on, we do a demo, and then we typically say we do a scoping call, which is we kind of cover end to end what's your current customer journey like right now? Where could we effectively deploy AI for your group? Does it make sense? Where does it make sense? And so we typically start with a demo of the product, and then if that looks good from there, we typically scope the product. So go to our website, book a demo with us, and that's where you would start, and we could start that journey together.
Sounds good. Well, Jeremy, thanks for being on here, man. There's a lot of good nuggets we talked about today. The key fears of franchise systems using AI. We talked about being able to differentiate the places where you ought to use AI and where you shouldn't. Places where, the ROI, like, and we didn't even dive into how to figure that out, but being able to calculate the ROI of an AI model is really critical. And then combining CRMs with AIs to make sure you've got proper data modeling so that the AI can be more intelligent and get more done. So much. So thanks for all the insights today. I sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate your time, and we're excited.